And at this time, it's my pleasure to present Matt Kauffman.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Matt Kauffman. Like Jan said, a lot of you probably know me or know of me. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and then I made my way to Louisiana, and then in 2017, I moved here to this Rio Grande Valley. And I've always been a lover of nature, outdoors, all that. I was more of a herper, though, when I came down to somebody that likes reptiles and amphibians. But I got a job here at the Valley Nature Center, and I ended up getting put in charge of the grounds, taking care of the butterfly gardens, and eventually the nursery, nursery, which was much larger than what it is now. So I didn't really have a choice but to learn the native plants, which I didn't mind. I got right into it, and I've been in love with them ever since. So a bit about me. Since then, I've been growing mainly at my house, but it keeps growing and growing and growing. Like a lot of you, I don't have a whole lot of space in the ground, so I have this containers. Pretty much everything's in a container. I have a few things in the ground and do that. But so that's what this presentation is going to be on. A lot of it's pretty basic from the beginning, just think of it as a refresher, but then I'll get into some specific species that are pretty suitable for containers, and then we'll get some questions at the end. So why grow native plants? They're adapted to our climate, that are important components in our native ecosystems, which is probably the most important thing to me. You have native plants and you get the native wildlife. It's amazing to see. Even with 10 plants, native plants in container, you'll get them to see insects, even lizards, snakes, and you see all kinds of stuff. It's so fun to watch. Going on with that, they attract birds and other wildlife, and many of them are attractive and interesting to look at. People, when I first started, I would get people in the nursery and they would say, oh, but native plants aren't pretty, but I'd say, come out here to the garden. And then you take them out from the native plant garden. Oh, wow, these are native, yeah. So a lot of them are really attractive. And everyone loves butterflies. A lot of people get into it with their love of butterflies. And you have to have native plants to attract the butterflies. And more importantly, their caterpillars. They use it as host plants. So why keep native plants in containers? There are some pros and there are some cons. I'll just start by saying that all of our native plant species would rather be in the ground. That's just a fact. But like I said, some of us don't have the space, so we do what we can. So some of the pros, they're easy to manage, meaning they stay relatively small. You can kind of keep a really close eye on them. Good for small spaces, again, like I said. You have a little patio, you can move around. They're good for beginners. I was a beginner in 2017, and aside from texting King on the time, asking, what's this? I learned a lot just by keeping them and growing them, seeing what they like, what conditions, they're best suited to. And, you're going to lose some plants that way, but it's okay. We love it. Easy to relocate, obviously. And that's really important when it comes to full sun, part shade, winter, summer. If you have a condition that's not great for the plant, you can change it. You can move it in the sun, need more sun, you get a shade. Now there's some cons. They definitely need more water, especially about some, and then we get these oddments. So in June or July, August, I was watering every other day sometimes. They can be more expensive to keep in containers because you got to buy the soil, you got to buy the container, and I usually just use the cheap plastic container, but it still adds up. Going along with the environment, they're more susceptible to cold damage because being above the ground, even though they're in the soil in the container, we get a hard freeze. Well, some of them don't form it. But you know, you can cover them up with plastic, you can move them under carports, or you can take them inside until they show done. And this is a big one. Plants may not reach their full potential. And this is true for a lot of them. Keeping a plant in a container, they're just not going to, aside from maybe cacti and succulents, they're just not going to get as big as they will in nature or elsewhere. You know, they might be healthy, they're going to be a little smaller. Pretty most. So, which native plants are best suited for containers? Cacti and succulents, ground cover, and cacti and succulents are probably the best for containers because most of them don't have a really, really deep root structure. By the time they have shallow roots, so, and they don't need a lot of water. So they do really well in containers for the most part. Ground covers tend to do well. And I'm going to go over these one by one category by one category. Annuals do well because they produce a lot of seeds. They only grow for one season, so you know, they're not continually growing underground year after year after year. So they do pretty well. Herbaceous perennials. What's an herbaceous perennial? That's any plant that lives more than 3 years and is woody or semi-woody, but generally dies back in the colder months. Keeps its roots, dies back, and in the spring, the foliage comes back up. But they do well because again they don't have the long tap roots like a tree or a big shrub would have. So they're a little easier to manage. Smaller shrubs. Now this is you know, one step further than the herbaceous perennial. This is a regular tree or shrub, a perennial that lives more than 3 years, but it's going to put a big taproot in the ground and keep growing and growing after year and get very woody. Smaller vines do well, I found. Some of the bigger vines, like maybe Owlsville vine and things like that, might get a little too big, but I'll go over some of the smaller vines. Monocots, monocot is a type of group of plants that has one cotyledon or seed leaf. A lot of times they have bulbs or stamens. They have, I believe, vertical veins in their leaf, stuff like lilies. So they do pretty well in containers because of that bulb, and they just have little fibrous roots. They don't have a big tap root, so you can manage them very well in the container. And of course, seedlings and cuttings. You know, most of our plants that we have come from seed or cuttings, and they always start out in a container. Unless you're planting seeds right the ground, of course. So cacti and succulents. Seriously, and these are all my plants that I took pictures of in my garden. So a cacti again is when succulent. These are plants that are really well adapted to dry conditions. They don't need a lot of water. Instead of leaves, with cacti they have spines. There's a few that have leaves, but for the most part, instead of leaves they have spines. And these are all adaptations. Dryness and not a lot of precipitation. But this one is horse crippler, and I do have the left. I knew I had to, for this group, I had to add the scientific names to it. And then my girlfriend didn't help me with this one today, and I was struggling, because I'm not the best with conifers. And I think they changed this. Homocephala texensis is in where it is now. But it's a really nice native cactus, with the big pink flowers. I think I've had that one for 7 years, and it's doing just fine. Variegated manfreda, which is a succulent, and it's a monocot, so we got both of them there.
Daz,
Yes,
I didn't have seeds for Manfreda sativari, which
I got
is very good, but it's good. So people know that you're over there.
okay. And they're really easy to grow from seed.
What the big side?
Yeah, and variegata and sativari look, and you know, I'm pretty sure this is variegata. They're really hard to tell apart, even when they bloom. They maybe can too. can explain that after a little bit to clear it up. I know Cider has a really long, full spike, whereas variegated is more 2-3 feet range. Cider I can do like 7-8 feet long. 12, there you go. And you know, these, like again, they have kind of a tuberous, fibrous, tubeless root system. And you know, they might die back in the winter, but since they have that, they're gonna come back up in the spring. But again, they don't have really deep roots, so they do really well in the sand. The pencil cactus, a kind of serious Posedra, is then that might have a newer name, I'm not sure. But that's another one that does well. And it's a really interesting cactus because it's only about as thick as my pinky finger, but very long. It grows up in other shrubs and trees, to kind of using them as support. But you know, it gets these big giant flowers like that, saying these really nice. Cat, I think you gave me those. I was cats. These were cuttings. I have another one. They get kind of a tuberous root, but you don't need it. These were cuttings. You stick them in the ground. Don't keep them too wet, but moist, and they'll do for you. Icomia, Jatropha cathartica, is a really interesting substrate plant. It's got everything I'm talking about. It seems like that's tubers, because I love tubers. It has a tuberous root. You can kind of see it here. But in habitat, this would be under the ground. All you would see is the foliage in the spring and summer, and then usually in the summer, if it's really dry, they'll die back. But then they'll come back in the spring. But in containers, people like to kind of plot them up so you can see that tuber. It makes it really interesting looking, and they have the best, pink flowers. So ground covers. Ground covers are any plant that goes along the ground. It's kind of self-explanatory, but a lot of times they'll root at the node where the leaves come out by the node, and if they touch the ground, they'll put out roots there and just keep kind of growing like that. But they don't have to. When you keep them in containers, you can kind of put them in a hanging basket or something, and they'll hang over the side. And they do with enough water, they do just fine with that. But here's tooth tongue, Justicia policella. And I gave this presentation at the National Butterfly Center, so I added the host plants that I know of anyway. So the tiny Inulata checker spots and the Texan Investa crescents is a host plant for, well, this is a host plant for those butterflies. So I think the common name is silky leaf frog fruit or something like that, but it's Phyla striculosa up here. We have two frogs from native here, striculosa and what's the other one? What's the other one, Ken? Notophore? Yes. And that's a really good host plant also. Plus the butterflies love the little flowers, and it does really well in containers. The Phaon crescent, the white peacock, use it. Chisme, and that is a really appropriate name for that, because once you have it, even in container, you're not getting rid of it. It's going to come and slip that part. That's not mean gossip in Espanol. It spreads like gossip. But Portulaca pilosa, well, it's attractive. In a lot of the box stores, they sell a cultivated variety that's bigger flower. But this is our native species. And I believe it's an annual, but like I said, it's going to pop back up. And if anyone has a question, you comment. You can just do that. But for anything like me, I won't remember something. Powder puff is a Mimosa striculosa. And it's a host for white striped longtail skipper, Mimosa yellow, and records blues. That's a dainty little, nice little plant. It's I don't know if anyone remembers when they were kids, you could touch the leaves and they close up. I think that's interesting about that. It's a legume. And then annuals do well in containers a lot of times. As I kind of touched on earlier, annual is any plant that they live for one growing season. So it's gonna grow up really fast, do its thing. They normally produce a lot of flowers, a lot of seeds, and then they die. And nobody took them. So we have rose, I believe rose sundrops is a common name, or Nathra rosea, or rosea. It's a close relative of the other one you see in lawns sometimes in the spring with the big flowers. But this one has a little bit smaller flower, but it's an interesting plant, and it comes back every year for one. And it's funny, like, I have a container garden, but since I have all my containers so close together, it's kind of like having a regular garden when it comes to seed dispersal and things like that. So I don't have to worry about propagating a lot of this stuff on purpose, it just does it on its own. And Nathras, when it rains on the seed pods, they throw the seeds.
Yeah.
So that's a great advantage there. Sleepy daisy, Santisma texanum, is one that not a lot of people grow, but I think they should. It's pretty annual. It's probably 3 or 4 feet max height. A lot of flower stalks, puts out a lot of flowers. They call it sleepy daisy because in the evenings the brave flowers. See, these are all flowers, and a lot of you know that, but these are all flowers, brave flowers, and then in the middle they call disc flowers. All the Asteraceae branch out, but the ray flowers will close up in the evening, like they're asleep, and then by about 10 o'clock the next morning they open up in. But I think I collected one of those from somewhere 6-7 years ago, and like I said, I've never had any worry about having any seeds, and they always come up. Well, once you're able to start recognizing little seedlings, then it makes propagation a whole lot easier. You're not pouring everything out that you shouldn't, or you don't want to be. Clammy weed, Valencia dodecandra, and I believe it's variety Rio Grandensis, but I couldn't clear at the bottom there. It's an interesting annual. It looks like a legume, but it's not. I believe it's in the caper family. It's kind of foul-smelling leaves, but and I think I forgot there. That's a host plant to something. What is it? One of the whites, Cat?
Yes. I think the dying white is one.
Okay.
One of those.
Here's about
Great Southern White.
Great Southern White. Okay. But it's a kind of I like the dainty flowers. They're really attractive. Golden Wave, another really common annual. Coreopsis tinctoria. And this one will get pretty large, and it's beautiful in the spring. You know, they tend to go downhill mid-summer or so you enjoy them while you have them. And then just pull them out and use your pop sugar. Didn't you? And so herbaceous perennials, like I said earlier, these are perennials that kind of die back a little bit or a lot of it sometimes, depending. And winter months, Mexican hat, Racimata columnifera. They're the ones that should be familiar with that, but it does pretty well in container. I don't know that it's such a great plant for butterflies. I see some smaller ones, but it definitely attracts pollinators. And it's interesting looking. Wright's Yellow Show is a nice one. And this one just got a name change. I'm not even sure how to say it. Calpulospermum radii. That one has a big tuberous root. And especially in the spring, it puts up some really interesting foliage with 5 leaves, kind of like a maple leaf looking.
Is that the one on
the far right here? I'm on falling straight. And the flowers are just gorgeous. They're about this big.
Yes.
The only problem is they bloom in the morning, and if you don't get up early and see them, they're going to be gone by noon.
Yep.
They kind of go to them. So have your cell phone ready. But they bloom sporadically, throughout the year, other months of the year. And depending on water, they bloom throughout all summer. They become happy. Stick leaf is this guy right here. And it got its name because it is very sticky. The leaves, the stems. If you got a leaf stuck to your shirt, forget it. You're not getting it out. I mean, you can if you're really careful, but it's tough. They're extremely sticky. And they use that for, I assume, well, probably to discourage delivery for one, and probably to disperse seed dispersal because their fruit also will stick in front of it and get, quick, disperse some like that way. But another one with the tuberous root. I like tuberous roots because they just tend to do well in containers. If you can keep the soil right as far as not too wet, not too well, you don't have to worry too much about not too dry. As long as your soil is not too wet, they're really hard to kill. And they have a tumor. Because I mean, it's that tuber is basically storing energy, all summer long, and then in the spring, everything just comes back up. Texas shrimp plant, you'd see a plastigeria, Platystegia, is a really cool plant. Ken introduced me to this, I think, when I first started learning my native plants. It's really interesting. These are little flowers here. These are actually bracts. The part that looks like a shrimp are its floral bracts. One of the not so common plants in Star County. I think it occurs in central Texas in a couple counties of Washington. But it does really well when you move down the sun.
Some kind of animal that likes it. It was about their brains.
Interesting. Well, some kind of animal seems to really like eating a lot of muffins. Smaller shrubs. So these are your shrubs that don't get huge like fiddlewood or Barbados cherry, and manzanita. Some of those that you might not necessarily want to keep in a container for the duration of butterfly. But some of these I get away with keeping in containers for a long time. Onothera cereulata, yellow sundrops, is this one. And this is a plant of the sand. It used to be Calolophus cereulata, but they changed it to Onothera because it does have the same flower, full structure, the same fruit structure as one. But it's a plant of the sand sheet, and it blooms sporadically throughout the year, but especially in the spring, it blooms really well, and the flowers are they're big. But they're really attractive. That's one that's not available too often. I think it should be. I think a lot of times people hear, it grows in the sand sheet. It's not that good. But they, a lot of them are really adapted. Mexican oregano over here. Libia graviolis. Was a really nice plant. Like the common name suggests, it can be used as an oregano substitute. It's got the little attractive flower, but it's good for pollinators. Zexmania or Wadelia here. Now this can be a bigger plant. In habitat, it can get 6x6, well not 5. It can take up a big space. But I've had that plant for 5-6 years, and I just cut it way back in the early spring, late winter, and it comes back just fine. It actually likes being in containers. It likes being cut back. Well, I don't know if it likes it, but it does well being cut back. Plants can't like it, not like it emergency. So Wadelia acupulosensis variety hispida. And I didn't put that there either, but I believe that's a host plant for the border plants. Butterfly. Narrow-leaf low mallow, Paralcia angustifolia, this pink one here. This is one that's really common in West Texas. I went to Big Bend in May, and I saw it everywhere there. I've never seen it here in the valley. Ken gave me that plant 5-6 years ago. It's still going strong. We container it. Yeah, it's really pretty attractive plant. It's in the mallow family, flood mallow. It was really cheap. But yeah, that should be grown more. So some smaller vines. everybody knows what a vine is, you know. Like, they can either be twining or they can have tendrils, use other plants or structures to grow up them. Passiflora foetida has a lot of common names, Itachi flower, Colorado de Cristo. Of course, it's a host plant for the Gulf, variegated and Mexican fruiters, such as this one here. Passiflora has very distinct flowers. It does really well in containers. You know, in habitat it can get fairly large, but a lot of times, even in habitat, they're kind of small. But with extra water, they can get pretty big. Balloon vine over here in the top right, Cardiospermum malacacabum. I believe this one's an annual, but there's one that looks just like it that's a perennial. Jana reminded me that I had Cardiospermum. Torina. Yeah, and they look, I think one has hair, one doesn't. But they do really well in containers, for me anyway. And then there's the other native one, Dissecta. It does well too, for the Chihuahua wine, they call it. And it's a host plant for the silver banded and Mexican gray aspens. Good. Which is another plus. Hey. Butterfly pea, Centrosema virginianum, which is this one over here. And that is really, when I say smaller vines, that's a small vines. You know, maybe 3 feet, 4 feet at the most. We see it, maybe stop. But I didn't think it was a host plant until this year I found the long-tailed skipper caterpillars one. So that was a cool discovery. But that flower is about the size of a quarter. Really attractive. Epomea conturloba variety toriana, which is Thai vine, which is morning glory, one of our native morning glories. A lot of people think it's weedy, but I don't know if any of y'all noticed, but this year was a really good year for this plant. They seem to be blooming extra vibrantly this year. But it does really well through these things. Nothing. So monocots. And I'll explain what monocots are. So this one is blue-eyed grass, Sesquentium biform. When it's not blooming, it does look a lot like grass. But when it blooms, it's really attractive. And we have 2 species. One occurs in the sand sheet. Another one, I think, likes a little moisture condition. I believe that's this one. This is the one I have. You might see it in ditches, I think. But it does well. Texas crag lily, or the green island lily, I think is another summoning over here with the little baby. Echindia texensis. That's a really, really nice plant, and it has the grass-like foliage, but then it'll put up this blue stuff, maybe this tall, just covered in those yellow flowers. We also have Echindia, with Chandleri, and it looks very similar. Except for there's a little bit of difference in the floral structure. Right. This one is more common in cultivation. Chandleri is more common in the wild. Neither one of them are all that common. Anyway.
That's because one keeps all this lapsed
Chandleri.
to somebody who doesn't have.
I have some seeds for it. Good. No. Purple fleet leaf, Lophia drummondii. This one. Another little monocot lily-like plant with a beautiful flower. Most of the year you're not really going to notice it, but when it blooms, it's a showstopper. Like that flower, about that big. This now that's really attractive. And then the rain lilies. I think it's Zephyranthes now. Well, Chlorosolid. Used to be Crumaria drummondii. But most of you are probably familiar with those. You see them in the yard after the rain. But I always like to keep up wheelie containers because they're just so easy to keep them. And these you can even, you don't even have to worry about too wet. They'll survive pretty much anything. And seedlings and cuttings, like I was saying, most of our native plants that you get that are available, they start out in a container. So these are some of my seedlings that I've grown over the years.
Over that lines with.
Oh, I think this is Ayenya. Rio Grande India, which is a cellulosic plant. It's really easy to grow from seed though, so I only grow a few and give them out for a year.
City. Blueberries. Yes, I can help.
So what kind of containers are best for which plants? Of course, clay pots for cacti and succulents. Clay and terracotta pots are really ideal for them because they're very porous. So the biggest enemy of cacti is wet conditions. Too much water. So they're really good because they dry out faster than a plastic container would. Let's get some of my cacti materials on. Plastic, is ideal for mostly everything else. Of course, as plants grow, you want to get larger containers. Some of those big potters. I know Jan has some nice big clay potters that she fills with all kinds of wonderful species. They do really well. You can get creative. People use old boots, old coffee mug, whatever. You can poke a hole in it. You can use it for a container. I like to use a soldering iron. It's really good for burning holes in the bottom. Like anything plastic. So if I like the looks of something, I get my soldering iron out.
See.
Which tool works best for our native plants? This one is pretty much, you really have to kind of experiment with it. A lot of our plants like well-drained soil. Not all of them, but most of them. Some are adapted to clay. But even in containers, you don't want something like caliche or even clay sometimes because it just gets so hard to compact that you go to water and it just water and then it just runs right off the edges. So I use a lot of perlite. Some people like vermiculite. Almost pretty much the same thing. I think vermiculite holds a little more moisture. Pumice is good. I mean, you can really put a lot of stuff in there. It can get kind of dicey if we can really get into it, but your plants will thank you for it. Peat moss is good to mix with perlite and vermiculite. And then sometimes I'll even put some native soil in there too, just for the microorganisms that a lot of plants you don't necessarily need, but some of them do really depend on. How to arrange your container plants. I mean, again, this is kind of personal preference. They're just some of mine. That's what my little area looked like in the spring. It looks much different than that now. I had to move this fence out. You can't even see through there anymore. But like I was saying earlier, I like to put my containers really close together because it mimics nature more that way. And I find that I get much more biodiversity as far as wildlife and insects when you don't have one here, one over there, I mean, you can put, some specimen plants out by themselves. But I like to make little groupings, but it's personal preference. There's some cacti, kind of in a, not in the direct sun, but kind of there's some shade there. Because most of our native cacti don't want to be out in the full sun. People think of cacti, they think, oh, full sun, full sun. They can take it, but they would prefer to have a little dab of shade, full sun. This was when I lived over at Oleander Acres. Believe it or not, these are all in containers. It looks like they're carved in the ground, but they're in containers there. insects, the good, the bad, and the beautiful. And that's a lot, I get a lot of questions on Facebook and stuff. What is this? Is this a good guy or a bad guy? Or what do I do about this or that? And I always tell people, just leave it, as long as you don't have like a plague of grasshoppers or locusts, just leave everything alone. Yeah. So I'll throw grasshoppers every once in a while because they can get little at it, and certain pests, mealybugs, certain things that you don't serve that much of a purpose. They serve a purpose, I'm sure, in the food web somewhere, but I'm taking them off my plate. This is a Buckeye caterpillar on. Oh, what is that? Like
Like shotgun says.
yeah, no, that's not shotty. Yeah, that's the other one. I should know what that is. My picture.
I'll take it.
Like I was talking about grasshoppers, they can be a pain, but that's why you have spiders. And the next one is praying mantis. I love when I see praying mantises in the garden. Spiders, a lot of people go, oh, there's spiders. I leave all that stuff. Because it kind of takes care of itself. There's a cloud of sulfur on a Ruellia, I think that's number 4, obviously.
I turn the lights quietly stand.
It's an angry,
Is it snake or?
it's not shy guy, it's the other species. Monada. Yes.
Just cut.
Oh, listen. No, any questions?
It's been Christmas.
When I first moved to Benitez, that was how I arranged stuff at first, but then I clumped it back on against it. Yeah.
Yeah, could you touch on fertilizer? What kind of fertilizer?
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of them, they don't necessarily need fertilizer, but if you wanted to grow a little better, you can add some regular osmocote that you get anywhere. Just sprinkle oil on each container. If they took a little take.
Is this the best time to do it though? What?
No, I would fertilize in the spring after some new growth came out. You don't want any fertilizer now.
Like birds. Sometimes that something that they use.
It's yes.
You can contact annual right now,
So
like a little exchange center. So when something starts happening, bring them into
these guys.
We have what's called winter annuals. A lot of them are coming up right now. But for certain annuals, it might be a tad bit early. But you can sprinkle seeds. Right now it'll be fine. If they come up and if we get some, it happens in days anyway. If you sprinkle some more. But probably, now would be a good time. Yeah, probably early February. After there's no mystery. And seeds are okay with creeping. It's the seedlings that get on the right.
Some what it's called.
But yes,
I was going to ask that. Can you tell anything about roots growing down through?
that's anybody that grows plants in containers knows when their plant is looking really good. You're like, man, that plant's doing great. And you go to move it, you go, that's why it's doing great. You can, when that happens, you pretty much have to cut them way back, cut the root. Sometimes I'll take a shovel and try and dig as much of it up as I can and just cut the whole container off of it and then put it in something bigger. But yeah, that's something that we all worked into.
Cargo one too.
Yes.
You have to use containers of your lakes for fisheries or things.
Yeah, that's a good question too. Yeah, plants, a lot of them do kind of better when, not a lot, some of them do better when you have 3 or 4 different species in the same. When now you're talking about getting bigger containers. Like Jan Wilkett has it. Right, so she's got some big containers, but I think all of hers have multiple species in them. Most of them. Yeah. But yeah, you can do that. The only time you want to be careful is when you see one of the plants that are trying to compete or space and they're not growing as well as you, and then you can put them in something bigger or separate them.
And so, Jim started pitching the cranes. Take a photo.
You have a toilet where
Yeah, totally. You know, like I said, it's very creative. There's a bathtub back there. I use that for my water toilets. Yeah.
One thing that I've noticed with the miners on container gardening is that background with exposed soil. This young sun's growing without a lot of things out there. There's not a lot of exposed soil.
Yeah, and again, you can put a little ground covers in there, like you were saying, multiple species when you're saying in container. A lot of times I just have stuff that starts to volunteer in my containers. And if it's a plant that I like, I just let it grow in there, doing its things. I gather it, and once it gets, if I want to put in something else later, I let it get a better size for transplanting. But yeah, that's fine to do.
Mine's inside. Did you try lantana, Morris?
Lantana, don't like containers so much. But velvet lantana doesn't look at bars and suckers. Cactus lantana doesn't do quite as well. Desert lantana does okay. It doesn't get quite as good. Private. Yeah, lantanas are.
or attention.
They're a little touchy.
Who cares?
You got anything else?
No, it's hard to ride. It's like set our balls, looking like golden bad, but to be honest,
Goldenrod is hard to find.
Yeah, it's always in the business.
Anything that's herbaceous and kind of dies back in winter does pretty well in container.
you guys really like myself and stuff at times, so I'll send those just like,
For those, like if you're fellow big over what's over on it, if you're kidding like really tall floppy ovals, maybe in like April or May, you could cut it in half. They're still gonna flower, they just won't get so top.
you should pen the top of these units, probably bake it, I see you what's out.
Maybe, I don't know. I think so. You think?
Yes.
But you gotta cut the flat down. Any blades, right? Cut this in because in there to put this.
Is that amazing? I like to see his argument there, but so
Okay. Oh, one more.
Going through cactus and come find that thing that's like
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep.
all the cactus I'll bring up to another years. I noticed that. Yes, really, I wanted to like know that not
No, that's me.
I say the girls I saw the girls with last people.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I didn't keep that in season. That's what we get.
Oh, great.
And this what if
Dig up the bottom. I take all the those
I had seen one kind of stick out there. Just by its face of time. That I like to play people. Oh, 2 questions.